Chapter 7 Season 1 certainly had a mixed reception from its release. Some people, including myself, really enjoyed the simplicity of the season and the balanced loot pool, while other people were upset there weren't more novel and interesting concepts introduced with the chapter's release. But as the season went on, some people grew really tired of the loot pool and the wingsuit, and lots of players became bored of the relatively simple season. Ahead of Chapter 7 Season 2 coming out in about a week now, there's been a lot of hype for this new season, as Fortnite seems to be listening to community feedback and making the game more interesting. Except for the V-Buck change, but I'm not gonna get into that. Before the season comes out, I think it's useful to look back on what worked and what didn't in Chapter 7 Season 1, and how they can adjust or change these features, specifically looking at the 3 core features of any good season: the movement, the map, and the loot pool. First, let's start off with the movement. While crash pads were in the game for a little and shockwaves were in pubs for an amount of time, the dominant movement item for this season was the wingsuit, which a lot of players are really not fond of. When the wingsuit first came out, I was a huge fan of it. It was a balanced movement item that allowed you to travel quickly to speed up the pace of ranked matches, but it was slow enough when you used it to where you couldn't really get dive bombed on. Another really positive aspect of the wingsuit is that it wasn't broken for running away. Because it had such a long startup animation, you couldn't escape from a fight you were losing that easily, and the fact that it left a trail meant that you wouldn't lose the location of the enemy you were chasing. I think this trail is one of the best mechanics they've added to a movement item ever, and I'd really like to see similar mechanics for future movement items too. When the wingsuit was applied in competitive play though, it didn't work quite as well. A lot of players felt like even if they did everything right, they would still get 200 to 0 out of the air on rotate. While it's up to you to decide if you think this is true, it wasn't an especially fun movement meta for a lot of players, and often players didn't feel like they died in a super skillful way. With a movement item like this, it's important to think about why is this happening and how it can be fixed in the new season. Well, the major reason for why it feels this way is because there's no quick way to interrupt the wingsuit to build or move fast enough to get out of sight lines for people spraying you. Once you're in the wingsuit, you're in the air, and you're really not able to defend yourself until you hit the ground, which often ends up taking a while. According to Ted Timmons on Twitter, tongue twister, the design director for Fortnite, there was going to be totally new movement items for this season, so fingers crossed that these ones are good. I think the perfect movement item would take something like the trail, the slower startup, and ability to travel long distances that the wingsuit has, but make it more ground-based instead of in the air. This way, players can protect themselves while rotating while keeping the positives of the wingsuit. I also am always a fan of simple speed and dash movement items like the Typhoon Blade and Kneecapper without the melee attacks, or the dash sprites in Chapter 6 Season 3, as these check a lot of the boxes of good movement of allowing you to travel a lot of ground while not being broken for landing on people or running away easily. Players also really like the grapple blade from early Chapter 5, but with how much less laggy lobbies are and how none of the guns have bullet drop anymore, I personally don't think it would translate quite as well, but that's just me. Let me know if you think differently. Next, let's move on to the loot pool. The loot pool this season was a mixed bag. It started out pretty well in my opinion. There were only 2 shotguns at the very start, the Iron Pump and the Twin Hammer shotguns, and it felt like you were able to consistently get a pump each game. There were also only a few spray weapons to choose from, and the only huge negative at first was how broken the Deadeye AR was, as you could find your preferred loadout pretty easily with the smaller loot pool. The Iron Pump is also one of my favorite shotguns they've ever added. It's really similar to the Sentinel Pump with a quick pull-out time and good damage, but unlike the Sentinel, it doesn't do absurd structure damage, making it really strong, but not in a way that's annoying to fight against. Then they added like 5 other spray guns, and the notorious Sovereign shotgun, which I think was a horrible decision, as this made it really difficult to find a pump consistently with how clogged the loot pool was, and instead you would find one of the most putrid shotguns Fortnite has ever concocted in every other chest. Seriously, this thing was terrible. Throughout this last week though, we saw Fortnite take out the Sovereign shotgun along with a couple spray weapons, and replace them with the pump, the SCAR, the suppressed SMG, and the combat shotgun. With 2 good different pump options in the loot pool, no broken ARs, but the Flex SMG, the Enforcer, and the SCAR being the main spray options, and not the Sovereign shotgun, this was one of the most fun loot pools I think we've ever had, and the buff to the pullout time of the pump along with the fact that it can now 200 pump were really positive changes to the gun, as it was starting to feel a little bit outdated. Going into Chapter 7 Season 2, apparently the whole loot pool is getting a full rework, and I would really like it if they did 2 different pump shotguns like they have it now, as it's rare to actually have to make a choice between 2 different shotguns that are both good, alongside an auto shotgun option for 0 build or whatever. I know the combat is technically in the game right now too, but I think this 2 pump 1 auto meta would be an amazing direction to take from a loot pool perspective. Again, with the spray meta, I think it's in a really good state, not having any broken scoped weapons, which are really annoying when you're getting sprayed across the whole map, and would love if they did something similar for Season 2. On the healing side of the loot pool, it was overall pretty good. The Flowberry Fizz Jar is always a welcome addition, and for the most part there were no really broken healing items, except one big glaring issue in my opinion: the Fizz Grenade. The concept of the fizz grenade is pretty good, honestly. It basically acted as a faster working shield keg that you could carry 3 of. The issue with the fizz grenade is that you literally couldn't see anything while it was active. One of my biggest critiques about Fortnite is they will often overload one of your senses with mechanics or items. One that comes to mind is how without fail at any POI with NPCs, they will play extremely loud music and often have alarms blaring that you can't turn off for whatever reason, overloading your sense of hearing. In this situation, they overload the sense of sight, as it is unbelievably hard to react to what's going on and often causes fights to get stalled out because players just sit there not wanting to roll a dice by essentially running into a blind shooting match. Regarding Chapter 7 Season 2, I do think a new type of chug splash with the new effect would be awesome, like a gold splash or a slap splash, as those are always welcome parts of the meta. And as long as they don't add a mist-based item or the legendary slurp juice back, I think Fortnite has generally done a good job with healing items in recent years. Transitioning into the map section, there is a crossover between the map and the loot pool that is important to cover as well. This, of course, is mythic weapons and medallions. From playing ranked mode, I do miss being able to drop at a POI with a mythic weapon every game, as it made it more exciting. I actually think having mythic weapons spawn randomly around the map with the bosses is a very balanced way of including mythics, but I also think that rewarding teams for being the best off-spawn fighters with mythic drop spots and medallions creates for more interesting tournaments and storylines for competitive play. In Season 2, we already have confirmed that the Ice King is going to have a frozen fortress somewhere on the north side of the map, and I think there are going to be at least 3 new POIs. If the rumors are true, it seems pretty likely that this will be a mythic drop, and I would not be surprised if we see some form of a medallion here. We have come to see how broken medallions can be, especially when they give you wall hacks or broken movement that no one else in the lobby has. So I think medallions with simple stat changes like an increase to speed or jump height could be really interesting additions to the game to give an advantage that is certainly worth fighting for, but not too broken that they're extremely polarizing for competitive play and ranked matches. Also, as I mentioned, if they do mythic POIs with boss NPCs, please don't include really loud music and alarms. It's just annoying and pointless, or at least make it so you can turn it off. I also think the boss feature is pretty interesting, but giving your opponent X-ray on you is obviously way too big of a downside, so they were never really worth picking up, even if they were just in pubs. One other issue for the map though was the balloons. On paper, these are a fun idea, some nice rotation built into the map, but unfortunately, they ended up being very gimmicky with the new surge in competitive play, where players could just sit on top of the balloons untouched to rotate for free. A positive of this map was that it was much smaller than previous maps, as well as the fact that the storm circles closed much quicker. These two changes combined for a faster paced battle royale experience, which has some positives and negatives. For ranked matches, this is a positive change I would say, as the long, boring mid-game where you're just looking for someone to fight isn't really an issue here. I've actually enjoyed playing ranked quite a bit this season, even if ranked still needs a major revamp. Cough cough, when is ranked 2.0 coming out, Epic? You teased it 6 months ago now. From a competitive aspect, I think there are positives and negatives. With the new surge, it does cut out a lot of the boring mid-game where players are just hiding in zone, which is generally good. But if Epic were to change surge or some other mechanic to actually incentivize mid-game fighting again, there is way less time during the game for teams to mid-game fight, as the mid-game itself is so much shorter now. This is kind of a broader issue, which I tackle in this video here, but a surge rework that incentivizes mid-game fighting would be an amazing addition to Chapter 7 Season 2, but I'm not going to get my hopes up on this one. Mid-game objectives are the other glaring issue in Season 1, as there just isn't much to do aside from looking for people in ranked, or hiding in comp in the mid-game. I know there was those weird rift events or whatever in pubs, but that really wasn't that exciting, and didn't really incentivize players to fight, or actually try and accomplish something, just a small temporary alteration to gameplay. Apparently there will be a quote, new old meta loot spot that activates in the mid-game in Season 2, whatever that means. Hopefully, it will give players more direction in the mid-game in a way that incentivizes fighting, as high-risk, high-reward mid-game objectives make for some of the most memorable seasons. I personally think the OXR bunkers were the gold standard for a mid-game objective, and I know a lot of you really like the combat caches as well from Chapter 4, and a similar mechanic to that would be welcome. I don't love floating island mid-game objectives, as they often gave the closest team to the island a huge advantage over the rest of the lobby, and often didn't lead to fighting as much, so any ground-based mid-game objective that spawns in where players can fight and earn a real advantage from it would be a welcome change. I don't know exactly what the new old meta loot spot means, but Ted Timmons did say on Twitter that the mid-game is leaps ahead in Season 2, which I'm really excited about. One positive thing I will say about Chapter 7 Season 1 is that the main focus of combat was building, editing, and gunplay, which is always a lot of fun, even if it's not always the most exciting or eye-catching. There were essentially no broken medallions, no obnoxious melee items, no explosives in comp, and not too many gimmicks overall. The only really big gimmicks that played out in comp was obviously the balloon strategy I already mentioned, and the wingsuiting strategy as well, where teams would ramp up really high and wingsuit to zone when the half-in, half-out zone was pulling. But other than that, the focus was actually on traditional Fortnite mechanics that the community loves, and hopefully Fortnite continues this trend into Season 2. I will say Storm Surge is the biggest issue for Fortnite competitive going into Season 2 though, and if you're interested in how they could possibly fix this, check out the video on screen.